you for having me.
You've done 2 visits to the T3 in New Delhi in the last 7 days. You're talking about how things have already improved in 24 to 36 hours. Social media, people are saying something differently. How long do you think it'll honestly take for all of it to be solved?
So let me start by saying that our civil aviation sector is a customer-focused sector. We have citizens who are willing to travel. We have airline companies that are wanting to provide that service. Now, in between that value chain comes the airport. The airport's responsibility is to provide a seamless, efficient process by which our customer can board his plane, and therefore demand meets supply. Now, airports have a very fundamental responsibility. The fact of the matter is that pre-COVID, we had a high of roughly 4.1 lakh passengers per day. That was the high, all-time high in our country. We have breached that this week at 4.28 lakhs per day. We've had almost about 4 or 5 days of greater than 4 lakh passengers. So India has never experienced the kind of volume that we are experiencing in this week. So where on the one hand it is gives a great deal of satisfaction that civil aviation has emerged from its nadir during COVID to a new high. That also presents its own issues in terms of capacity, and that is what we are experiencing today. Now, when I called a meeting here in the ministry on the 7th with all airport operators, the ministry itself, BCAS, CISF, and outlined certain processes where clogging was happening. Where was clogging happening? The first area of clogging is the entry point into the airport. And we had mandated that the T3, which has 14 passenger entry gates and 2 gates for crew and specially abled people, that should be increased to 16 gates for passengers and 2 extra for the crew as well as specially abled. When I went on the 12th, that's the first thing that I inspected, that has that been carried out? And that had been carried out, which had eased the congestion on the coming into the airport. Now, the minute you enter the airport, the second point that was creating or is still creating a lot of congestion is the whole issue of your security check. We had at Dial in T3 11 automatic trade retrieval systems plus normal, and 3 for crew and specially abled, total of 14. We had mandated that by the 12th, that should increase to 16. So we must have an additional 20% of capacity in place by the 12th. I went and inspected that myself as well. That has been put in place. Then we had a 3-hour meeting at Dial itself, where I also brought the airlines on board. And we have, on that day, decided a very strict timeline with 12 action points that need to be executed. The first action point that I said is that we must have usherers outside every gate. Each usherer must have a walkie-talkie. Each gate must be monitored through the command and control system. And through the command and control system, through the walkie-talkie, each usherer must be told that if there is clogging at this gate, please go to gate number 12, where the wait time is much less. I'm pleased to report to you that that had been put in place on the 12th night itself. The second point that
But you do know that they're right now only saying wait time greater than 20 minutes, and nobody knows if it's 20 minutes, 40 minutes, 60 minutes.
Let me finish. It's going to take a little long, this answer, so please bear with me. The second point that I said is that you must put digital screens above every gate that indicates to every traveler what the wait time in this gate is, and if it is 20 minutes, then which is the gate that he or she must go to where the wait time is 0 to 5 minutes. That, I'm also pleased to tell you, has been put in place on all 8 gates. So now a passenger, and you will see on social media yourself, there are many gates that have a wait time of only 0 to 5 minutes. There are some gates that have 15 to 20 minutes. So the passenger can then make an educated choice about which gate to go to. So that has been put in place. The third step that I had said is that the same digital signboard should be put where? On the Naka, which is 1.5 kilometers before the airport. So when you and I are traveling to the airport, when we stop at that Naka for the security check or when we go through the speed breakers, we can actually see, oh, that's the gate I need to go to because that has the least amount of people. So I have that awareness much in advance. That has been done. Within 24 hours, that signboard has been put up. The fourth point that I said is that all of this must be fed into the social media of Dial, plus all the airlines. So if you and I are leaving home, we should be able to go onto our phone and check which is the entry gate which has the least wait time, and I can go through that. All 4 steps that have been put in place. The 5th point that I made in that meeting is that though we have taken capacity from 13 lines for checking, either automatic trade retrieval system or normal, I want to take that from the current 16 on the 12th to 17 by today. So I want to report to you and through you to our viewers that the 17th security line is today functional at Dial Airport. I myself figured out that area. There were 2 areas with 5 security lines and 5 security lines, and the middle area had a huge barrier in between. And I suggested them remove the barrier and create another row here because there is a paucity of space issue. So that has been done today. We are going to increase the number of security lines from 17 to 20 by the end of this month. So therefore, your initial capacity where you started at 11 plus 2 is going to go to 20 by the end of this month. So it's almost going to be an increase of 70% in terms of security lines issue. The 7th issue was the issue that some check-in counters, specifically of 2 airlines, which I will not name on your channel today, because if they had not corrected it, then I would have named them, but they have done so, were not getting their people in place to man them for the peak hour flights at 5 in the morning. We issued a notice to both those airlines, and those airlines from today have got people in place, not only in Delhi, but the complaint was coming from Bombay, Bangalore, Guwahati, and Patna. So all 5 airports.
Mr. Scindia, those 2 airlines, I know which ones you're talking about. One is, of course, the country's largest private airline as well. But having said that, Mr. Scindia,
it's not one of those.
Okay, it's not Indigo.
But
okay.
So those have been put in place.
But Mr. Scindia,
let me finish. The 8th position that we have taken today is that we need to ensure that on immigration as well, on the international side, we increase our capacity of security lines, as well as we make sure that our international passengers get their landing card on the plane. What was happening till last week is that they were getting the landing card once they disembark, which means you're going to have a clogging up while you and I are filling up our landing cards. That process is being put in place as we speak. The final thing I want to say to you is that this is immediate and medium-term plan. We also have a long-term plan. As far as Delhi is concerned, we have said that we want to go from 17 today to 20 to finally 23 security line checks on a long-term plan. Plus, we want to ensure that T1, which will really be the congestion breaker, which is slated to come online sometime in December 23, Jan 24. We want to try and see if we can move that up to somewhere around October, November, prior to the holiday season starting, so that this clogging does not happen again next year. Finally, the point I want to make to you is that this exercise that I'm undertaking and the ministry is undertaking is not only for Delhi alone. We're doing this for Bombay. We're doing this for Bangalore. So I have a spreadsheet for each one of these airports with timelines and execution deadlines with the agency responsible for those execution deadlines, which I'm monitoring on a half-day basis. Photographs are coming to me, updates are coming to me on a half-day basis to ensure that we make sure that the pain points for my customers are removed as soon as possible.
So, Mr. Scindia, as you study those spreadsheets and you do them like every hour literally that you're saying, and you're getting real-time data as well, what do you have to say to all our viewers? There is a public outcry. It's not as if the airfares have gone down or gone up. They're paying airport charges as well. And now they're being told that you have to come 3.5 to 4 hours before departure, even if they have no luggage. So their time is money too.
Absolutely right. And let me say this, and I mentioned this in the beginning of our discussion, that there is a demand and there is a supply. People are desirous and, I wouldn't want to say anxious, but eager to travel. Airlines are eager and want to provide the service, because don't forget that these planes have been on the ground for the longest time. Now, it is the job of the airport operator to make sure that there's no bottleneck between my passenger who wants to travel and the airline that wants to fly them. That is the bottleneck that has occurred also because probably our airport operators did not anticipate that we're going to break all records of passengers wanting to travel. Having said that, I don't want to move away the blame, but at the same time, this is not the time to pin blame, but this is a time to put all our heads together and come up with solutions, which is what I'm trying to do today.
Fair point. So while they figure out the demand-supply match, first 9 days...
So you made a very important point, and let me come back to that. The fact that passengers need to come 2.5 hours before...
3.5 to 4 hours.
Well, they've said 2.5 to 3.5, but irrespective, that is not acceptable and not right, but we have to do this for the next week until we declog. The other thing we need to do is that the mechanics of slot allocation for peak hours was done on how many planes we can get to land and take off. But that's not the way an operations exercise should be done for an airport. The way it should be done is to be able to understand what is my throughput capability through the airport. That should determine how many planes land and take off in that hour. Because if you create excess landing and takeoff, then you will have as many travelers coming to the airport, but you won't be able to provide them ease of access through. So I've gone through that chart as well. And the fact is that two things have happened. Airport landings and departures in peak hour, I mean 0500 to 0900 in the morning, have increased by almost 15%. And to add to that, the load factor on every plane, which was hovering somewhere around 80%, 70 to 80%, has grown by almost 10%. So you've got a double whammy in terms of people wanting to go through that airport. And therefore, you have to control the number of arrival and departures as well. So we've decided to lower the number of arrival of departures per hour in the peak hours from 0500 to 0900. There are two solutions to that. Either some of those flights will have to move to non-peak hours within T3. And the second solution is some of those flights will have to move to T1 and T2 so that we then declog here. So I'm looking at this problem from a holistic viewpoint from every angle. From the airport itself to the airlines providing the service, convenience of passengers coming in, and we're trying to work on a solution as soon as possible.
Mr. Scindia, one thing has to be said, and you said you had a meeting with the CISF. Now, when we speak to the operators, they tell us the manpower at the airports has been the same for almost a decade. There's obviously a need to increase that.
So let me respond to that. I'd like you to personally go and see the situation at the airport. There is no shortage of CISF personnel at DIAL, at T3. And in the meeting I had on the 12th, the DG of CISF was there with me. His whole crew was there with me, as well as all from top to bottom, the whole management of DIAL. And I very clearly asked a question. Tell me if there's shortage on the domestic side today. We have increased capacity, as I mentioned to you, from 13 lines to 17 lines today. Manning those 4 lines is not an issue. The CISF personnel, additional people have been given. The problem is that there were not enough lines to put security lines to put people through. So what you need to do is do both things. You need to increase from the 13 number to finally 23, and you need to be able to man all of them. So there's no point putting in a line if you can't get manning, and there's no point having manning if you don't have a line.
Correct, yeah.
So therefore, we're doing both things. We've rolled out from 13 to 17 today. All of those are being manned. There is no shortage of CISF staff at any point as far as Delhi Airport is concerned.
So that's what the operators had told us. Before you leave, sir, I want to ask you one thing. The serpentine lines also for parking, for cabs, which has now come about the airport. There's been huge outcry.
So all of this, so we're going back to the same issue. So there are issues with regard to driving into the airport and parking. There are issues with getting into the airport. There are issues with the security line. And there are issues with regard to people coming out of the airport and getting cabs. All of that will be resolved once these 12 points that I've just articulated to you
Are
put in place, of which, as I reported to you, 6 points are already in place, and 4 points we're looking at in the next 3 or 4 days. Only 2 points are longer term. One is to increase the number of trays to 23, and the second is to get T1 operational. And the final point I want to make to you and through you to our viewers as well is that this exercise is being carried out by this ministry not only for Delhi Airport, but also for Bombay Airport and also for Bangalore Airport. Because Bombay itself also has breached its all-time high of, I think, 75 to 80,000 passengers per day to 1.1 lakh yesterday. So there is pressure there as well. It's not nowhere close to the pressure that we are feeling in Delhi, but we need to provide solutions for Bombay and Bangalore so that they don't increase in terms of problems in the future.
This is, of course, the holiday season, so that's the various action points that are being done. One last question, if you would permit me. A lot has also been said about this. Why is that the Delhi airport, when the congestion is so high, passengers are being asked to, remove their phone cables? There's a lot more security measures that are being asked at Delhi as opposed to Bombay.
No, I don't think security measures have been increased. But
those extra machines,
but having said that, I don't think that you and I as a traveler should even think twice
About
with regard to, because I mean, to me, security and safety is paramount. And if there are extra measures that also have to take place, why are they being taken place? They're being taken place for my security and my safety. So I think we as passengers should not have an issue with regard to that. Even if that is in place, there should not be long queues. That's the job that we need to resolve.
Any message for the viewers? It's the season of revenge travel. Should they continue with their holiday plans? Go to the airport?
Absolutely carry on with your plans. We are working 24/7, and we're going to try our best to make the situation much easier in the shortest time possible. Please bear with us. This is not something that that any of us had anticipated. But having said that, the airports must be able to provide the solution, because that's the job that they're given to do. And there is no excuse for a problem like this occurring.
Thank you, Mr. Scindia, for your time and for the first TV interview.
Thank you very much.